At 12:47 p.m. on March 14, 1945, Staff Sergeant Raymond Morrison stood behind a serving line near Remagen, Germany, watching German artillery shells walk toward his field kitchen. He was holding a ladle. Steam rose from the pot of beef stew in front of him. 347 soldiers stood in mess lines, waiting for lunch. The smell of cooking meat mixed with March mud and diesel exhaust. Morrison had served 218 men already. 129 remained. The first shell landed 400 yards north. The second landed 300 yards north. The third landed 200 yards north. Morrison knew what was happening. German artillery observers were bracketing the position, walking rounds closer. Standard procedure. Next shell would hit the kitchen area. He started to yell a warning. Too late. The fourth shell landed 30 yards from the serving line. The explosion threw Morrison backward. His ladle flew from his hand. Hot stew splattered across his uniform. The concussion wave hit like a physical blow. His ears rang. He couldn't hear anything except a high-pitched whine. When Morrison stood up, 17 American soldiers were dead. 43 were wounded. Medics were already working, screaming, blood. The smell of cordite mixing with the smell of stew. Morrison's field kitchen was untouched. The stoves still burned. The pots still bubbled. But 17 men who'd been waiting for lunch were gone. He picked up his ladle from the mud, looked at it, looked at the dead soldiers. One thought crystallized in his mind with absolute clarity. We're feeding them to death. February through March 1945. First Army was pushing toward the Rhine River. 83,000 troops requiring 3 meals daily. The mathematics were brutal and simple. Standard field kitchen doctrine hadn't changed since World War I. Kitchens were stationary. Troops came to the food. The process was always the same. Setup time, 2 hours minimum. Unload trucks, assemble field stoves, establish prep tables, set up serving lines, connect water purification equipment, organize food supplies, position mess equipment, service capacity, 300 men maximum per kitchen. Longer lines meant cold food. Larger operations meant multiple kitchens. Service time, approximately 1 hour to feed 300 men through a single serving line. Breakdown time, 90 minutes. Clean equipment. Disconnect stoves. Pack supplies. Load trucks. Secure for transport. Total time lost per meal. 4 to 6 hours across an entire unit. First Army had 176 field kitchens supporting combat operations. Each kitchen operated on the same cycle. Setup, feed, breakdown, transport, setup again for the next meal. The advance moved faster than kitchens could leapfrog forward. Do the math. 3 meals per day, 4 to 6 hours per meal, 12 to 18 hours daily lost to feeding operations. Units couldn't advance during meal service, couldn't move while kitchens were set up, couldn't operate while troops were concentrated around feeding positions. Multiply that across hundreds of units, and the numbers became catastrophic. First Army was losing 28 miles of advance every single day to meal breaks. 28 miles the Germans used to establish defensive positions. 28 miles that extended the war. 28 miles measured in lives. During rapid advances, the problem got worse. When units pushed forward 40 or 50 miles in a day, field kitchens couldn't keep pace. They'd finish feeding 1 meal, break down, transport forward. But by the time they arrived and set up again, the front had moved another 20 miles ahead. Units frequently went without hot meals for 2 to 3 days during fast movements. Cold rations only. C rations, K rations, hard biscuits and canned meat. Cold rations reduced combat effectiveness, reduced morale, reduced health. Studies showed soldiers eating only cold rations for extended periods had measurably lower combat performance. Slower reaction times, reduced endurance, higher illness rates. But hot meals required stopping, required concentration, required predictability, and predictability was killing American soldiers. German artillery observers weren't stupid. They watched American positions, documented patterns, recorded schedules. American troops ate at the same times every day. Morning chow, 0600 to 0800 hours. Lunch, 1200 to 1400 hours. Dinner, 1800 to 2000 hours. The schedule was consistent, predictable, exploitable. Wehrmacht artillery units received specific targeting orders. When American forces established positions, observers watched for field kitchen setup. Smoke from stoves, concentration of troops, lines forming. Then they called fire missions. The pattern repeated across the entire front. American field kitchens set up. German observers spotted them. Artillery targeted the positions. Men died while waiting for food. March 1945 was particularly brutal. First Army after-action reports documented it precisely. 214 American soldiers killed during or within 30 minutes of scheduled meal service. 468 wounded. That didn't count meals skipped entirely because artillery threat was too high. Didn't count units that went hungry because commanders refused to establish predictable feeding positions. Some battalion commanders tried staggered feeding schedules. Company A eats at 0600. Company B at 0630. Company C at 0700. The theory was sound. Reduce predictability through variation. But logistics made it nearly impossible. Field kitchens couldn't feed one company, break down, move, set up, feed another company, repeat the cycle. The setup and breakdown time killed the concept. By the time kitchen crews finished the rotation, they'd been working for 8 straight hours and still had 2 more meals to serve that day. Other commanders tried dispersed feeding, multiple small cooking positions instead of centralized kitchens. But that required more equipment, more personnel, more coordination. And small cooking positions were just as vulnerable to artillery as large ones. German observers didn't care if they were targeting 300 men or 50. Dead was dead. First Army commanders faced an impossible choice: feed troops and risk artillery casualties, or skip meals and accept reduced combat capability. Either way, soldiers suffered. The bottleneck wasn't just slowing the advance, it was killing men. And nobody in the Quartermaster Corps seemed to have an answer. Raymond Morrison was 31 years old, born and raised in Chicago. South Side, working-class neighborhood where everyone knew everyone and nobody had money, but everyone ate. Before the war, Morrison worked the lunch counter at Union Station. 8 years, 6 days a week, breakfast and lunch shifts. The job was simple and brutal. Feed 2,000 commuters during rush hours. Union Station lunch counter operated on speed and efficiency. Commuters had 15-minute breaks between trains. They wanted hot food fast. No time for elaborate service. No patience for delays. Morrison learned to cook under pressure. Eggs over easy, 2 minutes. Pancakes, 3 minutes. Sandwiches, 90 seconds. Coffee always fresh, always hot. He worked 3 griddles simultaneously, 6 orders going at once. Never got backed up, never served cold food. The lunch rush was chaos. But it was controlled chaos, organized, efficient. Morrison knew exactly how long each item took to cook, knew exactly how to sequence orders, knew exactly how to keep the line moving. He also learned something else at Union Station. He learned about trains. The station had platforms for long-distance passenger service. Trains arrived from California, Florida, New Orleans. Most had dining cars, full kitchens on rails, cooking while the train moved at 60 miles per hour. Morrison watched those dining cars through the station windows during breaks. Watched kitchen crews work. Watched them prep, cook, serve, clean between stations. The trains never stopped for meals. The kitchens operated continuously. Passengers ate while traveling. He watched the coordination, the precision timing, the workflow designed for motion. Morrison saw cooks managing stoves on moving platforms. Saw them handle hot pots while the train swayed on curves. Saw them serve full meals on china plates while rolling through Indiana at 60 mph. If civilian railroads could cook and serve meals while moving, why couldn't anyone else? That question stayed with Morrison. He didn't have an answer. Didn't need one. He was a lunch counter cook, not a railroad engineer. Then Pearl Harbor happened. December 7th, 1941. Morrison enlisted 8 days later. Army. They asked what skills he had. He said cook. They said quartermaster corps, basic training at Fort Lee, Virginia. Then cook training, advanced food service, field kitchen operations, sanitation procedures, menu planning, supply management. Morrison learned Army doctrine, learned the standard procedures, setup, feed, breakdown, transport. The same cycle that hadn't changed since the Western Front in 1918. He didn't question it. That was how the Army fed soldiers. That was doctrine. Deployed to England, June 1944, 2 weeks before Normandy. Assigned to Field Kitchen Unit supporting 3rd Armored Division. He landed on Omaha Beach, June 12th. Set up his first combat field kitchen on French soil, June 13th. Served first hot meal to combat troops, June 14th. The pattern started immediately. Setup took 2 hours. German artillery spotted the position. Shells landed before Morrison's crew finished serving. 3 soldiers wounded. Kitchen equipment damaged. They moved. Set up again. Same result. Morrison started understanding the problem firsthand. Field kitchens were targets. Stationary, predictable, vulnerable. He watched soldiers die during meal service, watched medics carry away wounded men who'd just been waiting for hot food. Watched the same pattern repeat day after day across France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany. Promoted to Staff Sergeant, January 1945. Good cook, reliable, followed procedures. Then transferred to Railroad Transportation Unit, February 1945. Supporting 1st Army Logistics. His job was coordinating food supplies for field kitchens, ensuring ingredients reached cooking units, managing distribution. The transfer put Morrison in rail yards, watching trains, watching supplies move forward. And Morrison started seeing something nobody else noticed. Late February 1945, Morrison was assigned to the rail yard near Liège, Belgium. Major supply hub. Trains ran constantly. Ammunition forward, medical supplies forward, fuel forward, food forward, empty cars back. Morrison watched the operation for 2 weeks, studied it. The efficiency impressed him. Trains loaded, trains moved, trains unloaded, trains returned. Continuous cycle. No wasted motion, except the return trips. Freight cars rolled toward the front loaded with supplies, rolled back empty. Wasted capacity, wasted opportunity. Standard military logic. Trains transport supplies. Kitchens feed troops. Separate operations, different purposes. But Morrison kept thinking about Union Station. Kept thinking about dining cars cooking while moving. Kept thinking about controlled chaos at 60 mph. One evening, Morrison was sitting in the rail yard office, filling out requisition forms. Supply requests for field kitchens. Eggs, flour, coffee, canned meat, the usual. He stared at a damaged freight car sitting on a siding. French boxcar. Shrapnel damage to one side. scheduled for salvage. Nobody wanted it. Too damaged for reliable transport. Morrison looked at that freight car and saw something different. He saw space. He saw a platform. He saw potential. What if field kitchens didn't have to be stationary? What if they could move with the advance? What if you could cook, serve, feed troops from a mobile platform that kept pace with combat units? The concept crystallized. Take a freight car, install field stoves, add prep tables, create serving windows, cook while the train moved, stop at predetermined coordinates, feed troops in rapid rotations, move forward. No setup time, no breakdown time, no stationary vulnerability. Kitchens that moved with the war instead of falling behind it. Morrison sketched the concept on the back of a requisition form. Drew a rough diagram of a freight car with stoves installed. Calculated capacity. One car could hold 6 field stoves. 6 stoves could cook for 200 men simultaneously. Serve them in 15 to 20 minutes. Move to the next position. 10 cars could feed 2,000 men per hour. 20 cars could feed 4,000. The numbers worked. Mobile kitchens, rolling with supply trains, cooking during transport, stopping only to serve. No predictable positions for German artillery to target. No momentum lost to setup and breakdown. No soldiers waiting in static lines. Morrison took his sketch to Captain William Henderson the next morning. Henderson was the quartermaster officer supervising rail yard food distribution. Morrison explained the concept, showed the diagram, laid out the mathematics. Henderson listened, studied the sketch, asked questions about stove installation, ventilation, safety. Then Henderson gave his answer. Interesting concept, Sergeant. Not approved. Focus on your assigned duties. Morrison tried to explain the operational advantages, the casualty reduction, the efficiency gains. Henderson cut him off. I understand your enthusiasm, but this isn't how we operate. Field kitchens have established procedures. We're not going to redesign logistics based on a sketch. Return to your duties. Morrison filed a formal proposal through proper channels. Wrote up the concept, included diagrams, capacity calculations, operational theory. The proposal went up the chain, took 3 weeks. The response came back on a single-page memorandum. Request denied. Proposal deemed impractical. Reasons: safety concerns regarding operation of stoves in moving rail cars, impossibility of maintaining sanitation standards in mobile environment, unauthorized modification of military equipment prohibited by regulation. Recommend focus on improving existing field kitchen efficiency rather than pursuing untested alternative systems. Morrison read that memorandum sitting in the rail yard office. Read it 3 times. Then he looked out the window at the damaged freight car sitting on the siding. Nobody wanted it. Nobody would miss it. Nobody was watching. Morrison made a decision that would either save thousands of lives or get him court-martialed. He was going to build his mobile kitchen anyway, unauthorized. After hours, using salvaged equipment and a rail car nobody cared about. Because regulations didn't matter if soldiers kept dying during lunch. Morrison started that night. 2200 hours, February 26, 1945. The rail yard was quiet. Most personnel had gone to quarters. Security patrols checked the perimeter every 2 hours. Between patrols, Morrison had the yard to himself. He walked to the damaged French freight car sitting on the siding, climbed inside, pulled a flashlight from his jacket. The interior was empty. Wooden floor, metal walls, shrapnel holes along the right side. The car smelled like oil and old wood and rain. Dimensions: approximately 40 feet long, 8 feet wide, 10 feet high. Enough space for 6 field stoves with room for prep tables and serving areas. Morrison measured the floor space with a cloth tape, marked positions for stoves with chalk, center line installation for stability. 3 stoves on each side of the central walkway. He needed equipment: field stoves, prep tables, water tanks, ventilation, serving counters, safety equipment. The rail yard had a salvage depot, damaged equipment waiting for repair or disposal. Morrison had been working supply coordination for 3 weeks. He knew what was there. Next morning, Morrison filled out requisition forms, requested the damaged freight car for experimental storage configuration testing. The clerk barely looked at the paperwork, approved it. Morrison now had official authorization for the rail car. Nobody asked what kind of storage configuration. Nobody cared about a damaged car. That afternoon, Morrison visited the salvage depot at Verdun, 40 miles south. He hitched a ride on a supply truck. The depot held equipment from British, American, and French units. Mountains of damaged gear, some repairable, most destined for scrap. Morrison found 6 British Army field stoves in the back section. Short design, wide base, more stable than the tall American M1937 models. British units had abandoned them during equipment standardization. Too much trouble to maintain 2 different stove types. Morrison signed them out as replacement parts for damaged equipment. The depot sergeant didn't question it, just wanted the inventory cleared. Morrison also found prep tables, salvaged them from damaged truck beds, steel surfaces, sturdy construction. He signed out 8 sections. Water tanks came from a destroyed M10 tank destroyer. 2 auxiliary tanks still intact, 15-gallon capacity each. Ventilation ducting from a crashed B-17. Aluminum, lightweight, heat-resistant. Drainage hoses from truck radiator systems. Storage racks from a demolished supply depot. Morrison loaded everything onto a freight car heading back to Liège. Marked it as Quartermaster Supplies. Nobody inspected it. The equipment arrived at Liège rail yard March 1st. Morrison had his materials. Now he needed help. Sergeant Thomas Blake was the rail yard crew chief. 34 years old, mechanic from Detroit, 12 years working automotive assembly lines before the war. Blake understood fabrication, welding, structural engineering. Morrison found Blake in the machine shop, March 2nd, 1800 hours. Need your opinion on something? Blake looked up from a damaged coupling he was repairing. What? Morrison showed him the sketches, explained the mobile kitchen concept, showed him the rail car, the salvaged equipment. Blake studied the drawings for 3 minutes without speaking. Then he looked at Morrison. You're insane. Morrison waited. This violates about 40 regulations, Blake continued. Unauthorized equipment modification, unsanctioned use of military property, operating cooking equipment in unsafe conditions. Morrison kept waiting. Blake looked at the sketches again. But the concept works. Dining cars have been doing this for 60 years. And field kitchens are getting soldiers killed. So will you help? Blake set down the coupling. Yeah, I'll help. But if we get caught, I'm blaming you. Blake brought 2 more men. Corporal James Rodriguez, mechanic, welding specialist, 26 years old, Los Angeles. And Private First Class Edward Chen, structural fabrication, 23 years old, San Francisco. 4 men. Working after duty hours, building something that wasn't authorized, wasn't approved, wasn't supposed to exist. They started with stove installation. March 3rd, 2100 hours. The British stoves weighed 140 pounds each. Morrison and Blake carried the first one into the freight car, positioned it on the center line, 12 feet from the front wall. Rodriguez welded mounting brackets to the floor. Heavy steel plates, 8 bolts per stove. The installation had to be solid, had to handle train movement, track vibration, lateral force during curves. Chen fabricated safety chains, backup restraints in case primary bolts failed. First stove installed, March 3rd, 23:45 hours, 2 hours, 45 minutes. They installed the remaining 5 stoves over the next 4 nights. By March 7th, all 6 stoves were mounted, secured, tested for stability. Morrison rocked each stove by hand, pulled on them, tried to shift them. Nothing moved. The installations were solid. Next, prep tables. The salvaged truck bed sections needed modification. Chen cut them to size, 6 feet long, 3 feet wide. Rodriguez welded raised edges along all 4 sides, 2-inch lips to contain spills during movement. Morrison had learned this from watching dining cars. Flat tables meant everything slid off when the train moved. Raised edges kept plates, pots, utensils contained. They installed 8 prep tables, bolted to the floor between stoves, welded support brackets to the wall for additional stability. Chen added storage racks below each table, space for pots, pans, utensils, ingredients. The prep area took 6 nights, completed March 13th. Serving windows came next. Morrison's design called for openings on both sides of the car. Troops would line up outside. Kitchen crew would serve through windows. Fast service. Minimal exposure. Chen marked cutting lines on both sides of the car. 4 windows per side, 3 feet wide, 4 feet high. Rodriguez used a cutting torch, worked carefully. The metal was thin, easy to warp if heated too much. First window cut. March 14th, 0200 hours. Chen smoothed the edges with a grinder. Rodriguez welded reinforcement frames around the opening, prevented structural weakness. 8 windows total. Completed March 16th. Morrison tested the serving height. Had Chen stand outside while Morrison stood inside at the window. Perfect height for handing out mess kits. No bending, no reaching. Water system installation started March 17th. The 2 15-gallon tanks mounted near the front of the car. Rodriguez welded support frames. Chen ran copper tubing from tanks to prep area. Gravity-fed system. Simple, reliable. Drainage was harder. Morrison designed a collection system under the prep tables. Salvaged radiator hoses channeled wastewater to a central drain point. From there, a larger hose would empty outside the car during stops. Not perfect, but functional. Better than no water system at all. Chen pressure tested the system March 19th. No leaks, water flowed properly, drainage worked, ventilation was critical. 6 stoves burning simultaneously would produce massive heat and smoke. Without proper ventilation, the car would be uninhabitable. Morrison remembered the dining car kitchens. They all had roof vents, large openings with covers to prevent rain entry while allowing smoke escape. Chen cut 4 ventilation holes in the roof, 18 inches square. Rodriguez fabricated covers from salvaged aircraft ducting. Angled design. Rain would run off, smoke would rise through. The system was crude but effective. Morrison tested it March 21st. Lit all 6 stoves with wood scraps. Watched smoke rise and exit through roof vents. Temperature inside the car remained tolerable. Hot, but workable. Final element? Storage. Chen welded racks along both walls, 3 levels. Space for ingredients, cooking equipment, serving supplies, cleaning materials. Morrison calculated capacity. The storage racks could hold enough food for 400 meals. Restocking would be needed twice daily, but supply trains ran constantly. Coordination wouldn't be difficult. By March 22nd, the mobile kitchen car was complete. 6 British field stoves mounted and secured, 8 prep tables with raised edges and under-table storage. 8 serving windows, reinforced and smoothed. Water system with 30-gallon total capacity. Drainage collection and disposal. Ventilation through 4 roof vents. Storage racks for food and equipment. Total construction time, 19 days. All work completed after regular duty hours. Total crew, 4 men. Total cost in requisition materials, approximately $300 in salvage equipment nobody wanted. Morrison stood in the completed car at 0100 hours, March 23rd. Looked at what they'd built. It looked rough. Welding seams showed. Paint was mismatched. The ventilation covers didn't match the roof color. Nothing about it looked official or regulation. But it was functional. And that was all that mattered. Blake stood next to him. Think it'll work? Only one way to find out. The first test had to be stationary. Morrison wasn't ready to cook while moving. Too many variables, too much risk. Better to prove the basic systems worked before adding motion to the equation. March 24th, 0600 hours. Morrison's crew assembled at the kitchen car. Morrison had scrounged ingredients from quartermaster supplies. Powdered eggs, canned bacon, coffee, bread, butter, enough for 20 servings. Rodriguez started a fire in the first stove. Used wood and coal, standard field kitchen fuel. The stove lit easily. British design was simple and reliable. Heat rose. Smoke drifted toward the ventilation holes. The roof vents pulled the smoke upward and outside. The system worked. Morrison heated water in a large pot, brought it to boil. Steam rose. Chen opened a roof vent cover wider to increase airflow. The steam cleared. Blake cooked bacon on the second stove. The smell filled the car. Crispy, salty, normal. The stove maintained consistent temperature. Morrison scrambled eggs on the third stove. Powdered eggs reconstituted with water. Not great, but edible. Combat rations were never about quality, just calories and warmth. Chen made coffee on the fourth stove. Strong and black, Army standard. By 0700 hours, they had breakfast ready. 20 rail yard workers lined up outside the serving windows. Morrison handed out mess kits through the left side windows. Hot eggs, bacon, bread, coffee. Average service time per soldier, 42 seconds. 20 men fed in 14 minutes. Morrison watched the last soldier walk away with his food. Turned to Blake. Stationary test successful. Blake nodded. Now for the hard part. The moving test required cooperation from locomotive engineers. Morrison needed someone willing to couple the kitchen car to a supply train and let him cook while moving. He found Sergeant Paul Martinez, locomotive engineer, 38 years old, railroad man from New Mexico, 15 years with Southern Pacific before the war. Morrison explained the concept, showed Martinez the kitchen car. Martinez walked through it, examined the stove installations, tested the mounting bolts, checked the structural integrity. You built this yourself? 4 of us. Martinez whistled softly. Not bad. Your welds are decent. Installation looks solid. Will you pull it? Martinez considered. If something goes wrong, if a stove breaks loose, if there's a fire, we'll have a catastrophe on our hands. I know. But field kitchens are getting men killed, Martinez continued, and this might work. It will work. Martinez made his decision. I'm running a supply train to Cologne tomorrow morning. 0615 departure. I'll couple your car to the end, but if anything goes wrong, I'm cutting you loose immediately. Morrison agreed. March 25th, 1945. 0545 hours. Morrison, Blake, Rodriguez, and Chen loaded the kitchen car with supplies. Ingredients for 50 meals. They planned to feed depot personnel at Cologne. Martinez coupled the kitchen car to his supply train. 5 freight cars carrying ammunition and medical supplies. Kitchen car at the rear. 0615. The locomotive pulled forward. The kitchen car rolled. Morrison was inside. Blake, Rodriguez, and Chen with him. 4 men and 6 stoves on a moving train heading into combat territory. Morrison lit the first stove at 0620. The train was moving 25 miles per hour on damaged track. The car swayed slightly. The stove flame flickered, but held steady. He placed a pot of water on the stove, watched it. The pot shifted slightly with track vibration, didn't slide. The raised edges on the prep table kept it contained. Water began to boil. Morrison added coffee grounds. The smell of brewing coffee filled the car. Rodriguez started the second stove, began heating oil for frying. The stove maintained temperature despite train movement. Blake prepared scrambled eggs. The prep table's raised edges worked perfectly. Nothing spilled. Chen managed bread and butter on the third stove, made toast. By 0645, all 6 stoves were operating. The car was hot. Smoke rose through ventilation vents. The system handled the heat load. Morrison monitored everything, watched for problems, checked stove stability, watched flame consistency, monitored pot security. The train rolled through Belgian countryside. Damaged farms, abandoned villages, shell craters. The war's landscape passing outside while Morrison's crew cooked breakfast inside a moving freight car. 0715. Morrison had 50 portions ready. Eggs, bacon, toast, coffee. All prepared while traveling at 25 miles per hour. The train arrived at Cologne Depot. 0738 hours. Depot personnel assembled. 52 men. They'd been told to expect hot breakfast. Morrison and his crew served through the windows. Assembly line efficiency. Mess kit in, food served, mess kit out. 45 seconds per soldier. 52 men fed in 18 minutes. Major Robert Walsh, depot commander, approached the kitchen car after service ended. Sergeant Morrison? Yes, sir. Where did this come from? I don't have any record of mobile kitchen authorization. Morrison hesitated. It's experimental, sir. Walsh walked around the car, looked at the serving windows, peered inside at the stoves. This isn't authorized, is it? No, sir. Walsh should have shut it down. Should have reported Morrison for unauthorized equipment modification. Should have enforced regulations. Instead, Walsh smiled. Good. Keep it quiet. I'm requisitioning you for my supply runs. My depot personnel need hot meals, and your system delivers. I don't care what the paperwork says. Morrison felt relief flood through him. Yes, sir. Walsh leaned closer, lowered his voice. Between us, Sergeant, field kitchens are getting soldiers killed. If you found a better way, I'm not going to stop you. Just don't make it obvious. Word spread faster than Morrison expected. Depot commanders talked. Supply officers compared notes. Within 6 days, Morrison's kitchen car had requests from 8 different units. March 26th through April 1st, Morrison's crew ran 6 supply routes, fed 340 personnel total. All meals served hot, all while train was in motion or immediately after arrival. 0 setup time, 0 breakdown time. Average service time, 16 minutes per 50 men. The efficiency exceeded any field kitchen in theater. But the operation remained unofficial, unauthorized, ignored by higher command, until Captain Henderson found out. April 2nd, Henderson conducted surprise inspection of rail yard operations. He noticed Morrison's modified freight car, saw the serving windows, smelled cooking. Henderson ordered Morrison to stop the train during a supply run, boarded the kitchen car near Durin, found Morrison cooking while the train moved toward forward positions. Henderson's face went red. Shut this down immediately. That's an order. Morrison tried to explain, tried to show the efficiency data, tried to describe the operational success. Henderson didn't want to hear it. You violated direct orders, Sergeant. You modified military equipment without authorization. You created safety hazards. You deviated from approved doctrine. This operation ceases now. The train stopped. Henderson ordered Morrison off duty, ordered Blake, Rodriguez, and Chen to return to standard assignments. Henderson filed a formal report that evening, recommended disciplinary action against all 4 men, possible court-martial for Morrison. The report went to Major Theodore Garvin, battalion quartermaster. Morrison faced punishment for saving lives, for building something that worked, for refusing to watch soldiers die during lunch. The mobile kitchen car sat idle in Liège rail yard, April 3rd through 7th. And American soldiers kept dying during predictable meal schedules. Major Theodore Garvin received Henderson's discipline recommendation on April 3rd, 1945. The report sat on his desk for 2 days while Garvin finished other business. Artillery requisitions, uniform replacements, standard quartermaster work. He opened Morrison's file on April 5th, read Henderson's report, read Morrison's original proposal from February, read the rejection memorandum. Then Garvin did something Henderson didn't expect. He investigated. Garvin had been a quartermaster officer for 18 months. He'd seen field kitchens operate across France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany. He knew the limitations, knew the casualty statistics, knew the operational bottlenecks. He also knew that good ideas sometimes came from unexpected sources. April 6th, Garvin visited the rail yard at Liège, found the modified freight car sitting on a siding, examined it personally. The construction was crude. Welding seams showed, mismatched paint, salvaged components. Nothing about it looked official, but the stove installations were solid. The prep tables were functional. The ventilation system made sense. The serving windows were positioned correctly. Garvin had supervised construction of 43 field kitchens. He recognized good design when he saw it. He interviewed depot personnel who'd used Morrison's kitchen car. Major Robert Walsh provided detailed testimony. Morrison's mobile kitchen fed my entire depot in 18 minutes. Hot food, professional service, no vulnerability to artillery because we weren't stationary. If this violates regulations, sir, then the regulations are wrong. Garvin interviewed Sergeant Martinez, the locomotive engineer. Cleanest operation I've seen, Martinez said. Morrison and his crew know what they're doing. Equipment is secure. Safety protocols are solid. I've pulled that car 6 times, 0 incidents, 0 problems. Garvin talked to soldiers who'd been fed by the mobile kitchen. Private Thomas Webb, 3rd Infantry Division. Best hot meal I've had in 2 months, sir. And we weren't sitting in one spot waiting to get shelled. Corporal Michael Preston, 9th Armored Division. Fastest chow line I've ever seen, in and out in under a minute. Still hot when I ate it. Garvin reviewed casualty statistics. March 1945, 214 American soldiers killed during static meal service. 468 wounded. He compared that to Morrison's operations. 6 supply runs, 340 men fed, 0 casualties, 0 injuries, 0 equipment failures. The numbers told the story. April 8th. Garvin called Morrison to his office at Quartermaster Headquarters in Liège. Morrison arrived expecting court-martial proceedings. He'd spent 6 days thinking about military prison. Dishonorable discharge. The end of his service. Garvin sat behind his desk. Morrison stood at attention. Garvin looked at him for 10 seconds without speaking, then asked one question. How many kitchen cars could you build in 2 weeks? Morrison wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. Sir, 2 weeks. Full support, materials, personnel. How many mobile kitchen cars could you construct? Morrison calculated quickly. With proper crew and supplies, sir, 10 cars, maybe 12. Garvin shook his head. Not enough. I want 20 cars operational by April 22nd. Can you do it? Yes, sir. Garvin pulled out authorization forms, signed them. You have official approval. Build your fleet. I'm taking this to Colonel Parks. Morrison didn't move. Couldn't process what was happening. Dismissed, Sergeant. Get to work. April 9th, Garvin presented the mobile kitchen concept to Colonel Edmund Parks, 1st Army Logistics Coordinator. Parks was 47 years old, career officer, 30 years in the Army. He'd seen every innovation proposal imaginable. Most were worthless. Some had merit. Very few actually worked. He listened to Garvin's briefing, examined photographs of Morrison's kitchen car, reviewed the operational data. Parks was skeptical. We have established procedures for field feeding, procedures that have worked since World War I. Sir, those procedures are getting soldiers killed. Garvin showed Parks the casualty statistics. 214 deaths in March. Showed him the efficiency comparisons. 4 to 6 hours per meal with static kitchens versus 20 to 30 minutes with mobile kitchens. Parks asked the critical question. This worked for feeding depot personnel. Can it scale? Can you feed battalions, regiments, entire divisions? Morrison believes he can feed 1,000 men per hour with proper car configuration. Parks considered. The mathematics were compelling. But implementation was always harder than theory. 2 weeks, Parks said. Build the fleet. Test it at battalion scale. If it works, you have my full support. If it fails, we return to standard procedures and Morrison faces discipline for wasting resources. Garvin agreed. April 10th, Morrison received official orders. Develop mobile kitchen system for operational testing. Priority authorization. Full quartermaster support. Blake was promoted to technical sergeant, assigned as construction supervisor. Rodriguez and Chen led installation teams. Morrison received additional personnel, 32 cooks, 16 mechanics, 8 welders, 4 carpenters. Garvin allocated 20 rail cars from salvage depots. Various conditions. Some needed minor repairs, others required extensive work. The operation moved from unauthorized night project to official priority program in 72 hours. Construction proceeded in 3 shifts, 24 hours daily. 3 rail yards, Liège, Verdun, Nancy. Each yard had different strengths. Liège had the best machine shops. Verdun had extensive salvage inventory. Nancy had experienced welders from French railroad operations. Morrison divided the work. Each rail yard would produce 6 to 7 cars. Standardized design based on the original prototype. Blake created detailed construction plans, precise measurements, stove placement specifications, prep table dimensions, window cutting templates, ventilation requirements. Rodriguez trained welding teams, demonstrated proper mounting bracket installation, showed them reinforcement techniques, emphasized safety chain protocols. Chen supervised structural modifications, taught window cutting procedures, explained frame reinforcement, monitored quality control. Morrison coordinated supply acquisition. British field stoves came from 3 different salvage depots. American quartermasters initially resisted releasing them. Morrison showed them his authorization from Colonel Parks. The stoves arrived. Prep tables fabricated from new steel instead of salvaged truck beds. Better quality. Uniform dimensions. Raised edges welded precisely. Water tanks manufactured specifically for the kitchen cars. 20-gallon capacity. Standardized fittings. Easier installation than salvaged components. Ventilation systems improved from Morrison's prototype, larger roof vents, better covers, increased airflow capacity. Progress reports came daily. April 11th, 3 cars under construction. April 13th, 8 cars in various completion stages. April 15th, 12 cars completed, 6 more in final assembly. Morrison inspected every car personally, tested stove stability, checked prep table installations, verified window dimensions, examined ventilation systems, approved safety equipment. Any car that didn't meet standards went back for corrections. By April 18th, 14 cars were operational. Quality control had rejected 2 cars for reinstallation of faulty welds. Those cars were back in production. April 20th, 18 cars completed and tested. April 21st, 19 cars operational. April 22nd, all 20 cars completed. Final car passed inspection at 14:30 hours. Morrison stood in the Liège rail yard, looking at 20 mobile kitchen cars lined up on parallel tracks. 20 identical freight cars, each with 6 stoves, 8 prep tables, 8 serving windows, water systems, ventilation, storage. Total fleet capacity, 4,000 men per hour if all cars operated simultaneously. Blake walked up beside him. We did it. Now we have to prove it works at scale. Morrison developed standard operating procedures during construction. His crew had learned lessons from the 6 initial supply runs. Now he codified those lessons into formal protocols. Cooking procedures, stoves lit in sequence. Number 1 and 6 first for temperature stability. Numbers 2 through 5 lit once outer stoves reached operating temperature. Total preheat time, 12 minutes. Menu standardization, 3 rotating menus. Breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, coffee. Lunch, stew, bread, coffee. Dinner, meat, potatoes, vegetables, coffee. Simple food. Easy to prepare in motion, easy to serve quickly. Safety protocols. All pots secured with clamps during movement. No cooking during sharp curves or rough track. Emergency fire suppression equipment mounted near each stove. Crew chief responsible for safety inspections before each operation. Serving procedures. 2 crew members per window. 1 serves food. 1 manages mess kit flow. Target time, 45 seconds per soldier. Windows 1 through 4 serve main course. Windows 5 through 8 serve bread and coffee. Sanitation requirements, all surfaces cleaned after each meal service. Water tanks refilled at every depot. Drainage system emptied at designated points. Waste disposed according to quartermaster regulations. Morrison trained 32 cooks on mobile operations. Skills were different from static field kitchens. Managing stoves during movement. Preventing spills. Maintaining coordination while train swayed. Working in confined space with multiple crew members. Some cooks adapted quickly. Others struggled with motion sickness. Morrison selected the best performers. 3 cooks per car. Enough for shift rotation on extended operations. He developed coordination procedures for multi-car operations. Kitchen trains could operate independently or combine into larger units. 5-car train, 1,000 men per hour capacity. 10-car train, 2,000 men per hour. 20-car train, 4,000 men per hour. Full fleet deployment, capable of feeding an entire infantry division in under 3 hours. By April 23rd, the fleet was ready. Crews trained, procedures established, equipment tested. Colonel Parks scheduled the operational test. Feed 3rd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment. 1,047 combat soldiers, forward position near Harzburg, Germany. Success criteria, feed entire battalion in under 2 hours. Maintain food quality, 0 safety incidents. Morrison's mobile kitchen program would either prove itself or fail spectacularly in front of Army command. April 24th, 1945. 0530 hours. Morrison assembled his fleet at Liège rail yard. 20 kitchen cars, 60 cooks. Support crew of 24 mechanics and supply personnel. 104 men total. Locomotive, Sergeant Martinez volunteered. He'd pulled the original prototype. Wanted to see the fleet operation. Route, Liège to forward staging area near Hardsburg. 83 miles. Estimated travel time, 2 hours, 40 minutes at 30 miles per hour, average speed. Morrison's plan, cook during transit. Time arrival for 0745. Service begins 0800. Battalion fed by 0900. But he was only using 10 cars for this test. 20 cars would be excessive for 1,047 men. Parks wanted to see optimal efficiency, not overwhelming capacity. 10 cars coupled to Martinez's locomotive. Morrison rode in the lead kitchen car. Blake supervised the rear 5 cars. Rodriguez and Chen distributed between cars for quality oversight. 0600 hours. Train departed Liège. Cooking began immediately. All 10 cars lit stoves simultaneously. Breakfast menu, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, coffee. Morrison worked stove 3 in the lead car, cracked powdered eggs into mixing bowls, added water, whisked until smooth, poured onto hot griddle. The train swayed over damaged track. Morrison's eggs shifted slightly on the griddle, stayed contained. The raised edges on the prepped surface worked exactly as designed. Cook second class Jerry Palmer worked the bacon on stove 4. Managed 6 strips simultaneously. Flipped them in rhythm with track vibration. Cook first class Raymond Chen, no relation to Edward Chen the fabricator, made toast on stove 5. 4 slices at a time, rotated them through. By 0645, all 10 cars had food prepared. 100 portions per car, 1,000 total portions ready. The smell of cooking filled the train. Bacon, eggs, coffee, toast. Combat rations never smelled this good. 0742. Train arrived at forward staging area near Hardsburg. 3rd Battalion waiting in formation. Lieutenant Colonel James Warren, battalion commander, approached Morrison's car. "You're the mobile kitchen?" "Yes, sir." Warren looked at the 10 freight cars, looked skeptical. "You're going to feed my entire battalion from these?" "In under 1 hour, sir." "I'll believe it when I see it." Morrison organized the service operation. 10 cars, 4 serving lines. Cars 1 and 2 served line 1. Cars 3 and 4 served line 2. Cars 5 and 6 served line 3. Cars 7 through 10 served line 4. Each line would feed approximately 260 soldiers. Battalion formed up. 0755 hours. Morrison gave the signal. Service began. Soldiers moved through lines, received mess kits at first window, eggs at second window, bacon at third, toast at fourth, coffee at fifth, cleared the area. Average time per soldier, 48 seconds. Slightly slower than Morrison's target, but acceptable for first major operation. The rhythm established quickly. Soldiers learned the flow, moved efficiently, no bunching, no delays. 0815. German artillery opened fire. Shells landed 400 yards south of the staging area. Morrison heard the explosions, felt the concussion waves. Warren ran to Morrison's car. "How long until you're finished?" Morrison checked his count. 683 soldiers fed, 364 remaining. 17 minutes, sir." Warren looked toward the German artillery impacts. The shells were walking closer. Standard bracketing pattern. Within 10 minutes, they'd have the range. "Keep going. My men need this meal." Morrison's crews maintained pace. Didn't panic. Kept serving. More artillery. 300 yards south now, getting closer. 0828. 891 soldiers fed, 156 remaining. 0833. 1,012 soldiers fed, 35 remaining. 0837. Final soldiers served. Total service time, 42 minutes for 1,047 men. Morrison's crews immediately began cleaning serving areas. Secured equipment, prepared for departure. 0845. Train ready to move. Martinez pulled out. Kitchen train departed the staging area. 0848. German artillery hit the vacated position. Shells landed exactly where 3rd Battalion had been standing 12 minutes earlier. 0 casualties. The battalion had already dispersed to combat positions. Warren radioed Colonel Parks at 1st Army Headquarters. Morrison's kitchen train just fed my entire battalion in 42 minutes. Hot food. Professional operation. We were clear before German artillery bracketed the position. Request permanent assignment of mobile kitchens to support my regiment's advance operations. Parks received 6 similar requests within 48 hours. 4th Infantry Division requested mobile kitchen support. 9th Armored Division requested it. 2nd Infantry Division requested it. Commanders who'd watched their men die during static meal service wanted Morrison's system. April 26th. Parks authorized full deployment of mobile kitchen fleet across 1st Army operations. But he also forwarded his recommendation to higher authority. 1st Army Headquarters needed approval from Quartermaster Corps Headquarters in Paris. The recommendation went to Brigadier General Howard Matthews, Chief of Quartermaster Operations for European Theater. Matthews had 32 years in the Army. Quartermaster specialty. He'd built his career on established procedures, field kitchen doctrine, supply chain management, standard operating protocols. He read Parks' recommendation, read Morrison's operational data, read the battalion commander testimonials. Then he read the part about unauthorized equipment modification, about a staff sergeant building kitchen cars without approval, about violation of established doctrine. Matthews wrote his response personally. Request denied. Field kitchen procedures exist for sound reasons developed over decades of military experience. Mobile cooking operations cannot maintain proper sanitation standards required by Army Regulation 3017. Safety concerns regarding operation of cooking equipment in moving vehicles remain unaddressed. The fact that this system was developed without authorization demonstrates lack of proper engineering oversight. Recommend immediate cessation of mobile kitchen operations. Return all modified rail cars to standard configuration. Staff Sergeant Morrison and supervisory personnel to resume conventional field kitchen duties. Effective May 5, 1945. The order reached Colonel Parks on April 28th. Parks read it twice, then called Major Garvin. Matthews shut us down. Sir, the system works. We have proof. Matthews doesn't care. He cares about regulations. Parks had one option remaining. Appeal directly to 1st Army Commander, Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges, 3-star general, commander of all 1st Army operations. But generals didn't typically overrule Quartermaster Corps on logistics issues. Different chains of command, different areas of responsibility. Parks would be asking Hodges to cross into Matthews's authority, to override Brigadier General's decision based on one cook's unauthorized innovation. It was a risk. Could damage Parks's career. Could result in Matthews retaliating against Morrison. But Parks looked at the casualty statistics again. 214 deaths in March during static meal service. 37 deaths in April, mostly from units still using static kitchens. 177 fewer deaths, because Morrison refused to follow regulations that were killing soldiers. April 29th. Parks requested emergency meeting with General Hodges. The meeting was scheduled for 0800 hours, April 30th. Morrison's mobile kitchen program had 72 hours before mandatory shutdown. April 30th, 1945, 0800 hours. Colonel Parks entered General Hodges's headquarters at Bad Godesberg. Hodges was 58 years old, career infantry officer. He'd commanded 1st Army since August 1944, led operations from Normandy to the Rhine, 183,000 troops under his command. Parks carried a folder. Statistics, operational reports, battalion commander testimonials, photographs of Morrison's kitchen cars. Hodges sat behind his desk. "You requested this meeting, Colonel. You have 15 minutes. Parks opened the folder, laid out the mobile kitchen data. "Sir, in March, we lost 214 soldiers during static meal service. German artillery targeted predictable feeding positions. In April, units using mobile kitchens lost 0 soldiers during meal service. Units still using static kitchens lost 37. Hodges looked at the numbers. Parks continued. "Mobile kitchens feed 1,000 soldiers in 42 minutes. Static kitchens require 4 to 6 hours for the same number. We're losing 28 miles of advance daily to meal breaks. Mobile kitchens eliminate that delay." "Quartermaster Corps rejected this system," Hodges said. "Yes, sir. General Matthews believes it violates established doctrine." "Does it work?" "Better than anything we've fielded, sir. 38 battalion feeding operations, 14,200 men fed. Average service time 28 minutes. 0 casualties during service. 0 safety incidents. 0 equipment failures." Hodges studied the operational reports, read battalion commander statements. "Lieutenant Colonel Warren, Morrison's mobile kitchens saved my battalion from artillery casualties and maintained our advance schedule. Colonel Robert Mitchell, 4th Infantry Division. Most effective field feeding system I've witnessed in 26 years of service. Major General Lewis Craig, 9th Infantry Division. Mobile kitchens should be standard equipment for all advancing units." Hodges picked up his telephone. "Get me General Matthews in Paris." 2 minutes later, Matthews was on the line. Hodges activated the speaker. "General Matthews, explain your objection to mobile kitchen operations." Matthews's voice came through clearly. "Sir, the system hasn't undergone proper testing protocols. Safety standards for operating cooking equipment in moving rail cars haven't been established. Sanitation procedures haven't been verified against Army Regulation 30-17. The equipment was built without proper engineering authorization," Hodges interrupted. "It's been tested. 38 operations, 14,000 men fed, 0 incidents. That's more field testing than most equipment receives before full deployment." "Sir, proper procedure requires..." "General Matthews, doctrine changes when better methods emerge. In 1918, we used horses for supply transport. Now we use trucks. In 1943, we used static field kitchens. In 1945, we have mobile kitchens that work better. Mobile kitchen operations are authorized for 1st Army, effective immediately. Expand production. I want 50 cars operational by May 15th. Any questions?" Silence on the line for 3 seconds. "No, sir," Matthews said quietly. "Good. Colonel Parks, you have full authority. Make it happen." "Yes, sir."